The house on Elmwood Drive glowed with soft golden light, balloons tied to the front porch swaying gently in the late summer breeze. Inside, laughter, music, and the faint scent of freshly baked cake filled the air. Emma Caldwell had spent the entire day preparing for her husband's 40th birthday. Every detail, from the table settings to the playlist, was carefully planned. Yet beneath her smile, something inside her felt off. Mark, her husband of 15 years, sat on the couch surrounded by a few friends from work. He laughed at a joke she didn't quite catch, but Emma noticed the way his hand kept brushing toward his phone, resting face down on the armrest beside him. Every few minutes, it buzzed. Once. Twice. Then again. He'd glance at it, too quickly, before flipping it back over. Emma's heart thudded softly in her chest. She'd seen that look before, months ago, when she first began sensing a distance between them. The late nights at the office, the quiet drives home, the sudden secrecy about his phone, all the small signs of something slipping away. "Everything okay, honey?" Mark asked when he caught her staring. She forced a smile. "Perfect," she said, but her voice trembled slightly. The evening carried on, music, laughter, candles flickering against the kitchen window. Their teenage daughter, Sophie, helped serve cake, humming along to a song from the speakers. For a moment, the warmth almost felt real again. Then the phone buzzed once more. This time, Mark excused himself and slipped into the hallway. Emma could hear the faint murmur of his voice, hushed, almost pleading. She stood frozen at the sink, her hands still wet from washing dishes. When he returned, his smile was tight, the kind that hides something behind it. "Who was that?" she asked casually, her tone careful. "Just work," he replied too quickly. "You know how it is." Emma nodded, but the knot in her stomach tightened. Work didn't send messages that late. Work didn't whisper on the phone during your own birthday party. Later that night, after the guests had left and Sophie was upstairs getting ready for bed, the doorbell rang. Mark looked startled. "Who on earth?" Emma beat him to the door. Standing there was a woman, tall, elegant, with striking auburn hair and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She held a small gift bag in one hand and a bottle of wine in the other. "Hi," the woman said smoothly. "I hope I'm not too late. I just wanted to drop this off for Mark. Happy birthday." Emma blinked. "You are?" "Claire," the woman said before Mark appeared behind Emma, his face draining of color. "Claire," he repeated, his voice tight. "You didn't have to." "I insisted," she said, stepping slightly forward. The air in the doorway turned sharp and electric. Emma forced a polite smile. "Well, come in, then." Claire's perfume filled the room, expensive, floral, and unfamiliar. As she handed Mark the gift, her fingers brushed his. Emma noticed the flicker between them, the kind of familiarity that years of marriage could no longer fake. Small talk followed, stiff and uncomfortable. Emma could barely focus on the words. Each laugh, each glance, was another piece of confirmation. The affair wasn't a suspicion anymore. It was standing right in her living room, smiling over a glass of wine. When Claire finally left, the door closing behind her, silence settled heavy in the air. Emma turned to Mark. "Who is she really?" He hesitated. "Someone from work," he said, too softly. Emma took a step closer, her voice trembling. "Don't lie to me." Mark's shoulders sagged, guilt flickering across his face. "Emma." The sound of Sophie's bedroom door creaked upstairs. She froze, listening. Emma lowered her voice. "We'll talk later," she whispered sharply. But deep inside, she already knew, whatever was left of their marriage had just shattered. Morning sunlight slipped through the blinds, scattering lines of gold across the kitchen floor. The house was silent except for the faint hum of the refrigerator and the clink of Emma's coffee spoon. She hadn't slept. Every time she closed her eyes, the image of Claire standing in the doorway replayed, that smug smile, the wine bottle, the way Mark's eyes had dropped to the floor. Across the table, Mark scrolled through his phone, his expression unreadable. The same phone that had betrayed him last night now glinted in the morning light like a guilty secret. "You're quiet," Emma said at last. He didn't look up. "Just tired." She set her cup down, the sound sharp against the ceramic. "Tired?" she repeated. "Or just out of excuses?" Mark finally met her eyes. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The weight of unspoken truths filled the space between them. "Emma, please. Not in front of Sophie," he said softly. "She'll be down any minute." Her voice cracked. "You brought her into this house, Mark. Into our home. Do you understand how humiliating that was?" He rubbed his forehead, sighing. "It wasn't supposed to happen that way." "Then how was it supposed to happen?" she asked, her tone icy. "Was she supposed to stay for cake too? Sing 'Happy Birthday' with our daughter?" His face tightened. "It's not what you think." "Oh, it's exactly what I think," Emma snapped. Her hands trembled as she grabbed her cup again, trying to anchor herself. "You think I haven't noticed? The late nights? The silence? The way you look at your phone like it's a lifeline?" Mark stood abruptly, his chair scraping across the tile. "I made a mistake, all right. A stupid mistake." The words hung in the air, cutting deeper than he seemed to realize. From upstairs, footsteps echoed. Sophie's soft voice drifted down the stairs. "Morning, Mom." Emma forced herself to smile. "Morning, sweetheart. Breakfast is ready." Sophie, still in her pajamas, plopped into a chair, unaware of the tension thick enough to choke on. "You two okay?" she asked, looking from one to the other. "Fine," Emma said quickly. "Just talking about the party." Mark gave a stiff nod. "Yeah, everything's fine." But nothing was fine. The calm was a brittle shell covering something raw and dangerous underneath. After breakfast, Mark left for work, or at least that's what he claimed. Emma watched from the window as he backed the car out of the driveway, her chest heavy. She picked up her phone and scrolled through his messages. Nothing suspicious, he must have deleted everything. But one name caught her eye in the call log, Claire M. 3 calls in the last 24 hours. She exhaled slowly, rage simmering beneath her grief. The rest of the day passed in a blur. She cleaned a spotless house, folded already folded laundry, replaying the last few months over and over. There were moments she wanted to call a friend, to confess everything, but shame kept her silent. How could she explain that the man she trusted most had been living a second life behind her back? By late afternoon, the sky turned gray. A storm brewed outside, dark clouds rolling in, as if nature itself mirrored her turmoil. The rain began softly, tapping against the windows. Then, just as she sat down to clear her thoughts, a text lit up her phone. It was from an unknown number. "You should talk to Mark before I do." No name. No context. Just that one sentence. Her blood ran cold. She typed back quickly. "Who is this?" No reply. Another message came moments later. "He's not who you think he is." Emma's fingers shook. The clock ticked in the quiet room, the only sound besides her quickening breath. She deleted the messages instinctively, though she didn't know why. When Mark came home that evening, dripping from the rain, he seemed tense. He poured himself a drink before even taking off his coat. "Rough day?" she asked, trying to mask the tremor in her voice. "You could say that," he muttered. She studied him, the nervous movements, the forced calm. "Someone texted me," she said suddenly. "Said I should talk to you before they do." His eyes widened just enough for her to notice. What? Who? I don't know. But they sounded serious. Mark's hand tightened around his glass. Ignore it. Probably spam. But his voice betrayed him. She could hear the panic beneath the words. That night, Emma lay awake listening to the rain, her mind spiraling. There was more than an affair, more than betrayal. Whatever secret Mark had been hiding was about to surface. And when it did, she wasn't sure either of them would survive it. The following evening, the house was silent again, too silent. The kind of silence that felt like it was waiting for something to happen. Rain had stopped, leaving the streets damp and shining beneath the porch light. Inside, the faint hum of the dishwasher filled the gaps between Mark's footsteps as he paced the living room. Emma sat at the dining table, arms crossed, eyes fixed on the phone in front of her. She's been calling, hasn't she? She asked finally. Her tone was calm, but there was steel underneath. Mark stopped pacing. Who? Claire, Emma said flatly. Don't insult me by pretending you don't know who I mean. He rubbed the back of his neck. Emma, we already talked about this. No, she said sharply. You talked. I listened. That's not the same thing. Mark exhaled, a heavy sound that seemed to fill the room. It's over, all right? It ended weeks ago. Emma's jaw clenched. Then why was she here? Why did she think it was okay to show up at your birthday with a gift? He looked away, searching for the right words, or the least damaging ones. She didn't take it well when I ended things. I didn't expect her to come here. I swear, I didn't invite her. Emma laughed bitterly. Oh, that makes it better. You just broke her heart, and she decided to bring you a bottle of wine as a farewell gift? Emma, please, he said, lowering his voice. Let's not do this right now. Sophie's upstairs. Her anger softened, but only slightly. She stared down at her hands, her wedding ring catching the light. Do you love her? The question hung in the air. For a long moment, Mark didn't answer. The silence between them was louder than any scream. Finally, he said quietly, no. It wasn't love. Emma looked up, her voice breaking. Then what was it? Mark hesitated. It was a mistake. I was lonely. We'd been distant for so long, She cut him off. You were bored, Mark. Not lonely. There's a difference. The sound of thunder rolled faintly in the distance, though the rain hadn't returned. The house seemed to hold its breath. He stepped closer, his voice softening. I'm sorry. I know I've hurt you. A sudden vibration broke the moment. His phone, lying on the coffee table, lit up with a message. Emma's eyes moved before she could stop herself. The screen flashed a single name, Claire. Her body went cold. Still over, huh? She whispered. Mark lunged forward, grabbing the phone, but she was faster. She snatched it from his hand and stepped back. No, you don't get to hide anymore. Emma, give it to me, he said firmly, his tone shifting. She opened the message before he could stop her. The words were simple, and devastating. I can't stop thinking about last night. Emma stared at the screen, disbelief washing over her. Her hand trembled as she looked up. You said it was over, she said softly. You swore it was over. It is, Mark stammered. That message, she's lying. She's trying to ruin us. You ruined us, Emma said, her voice shaking now. You did that the moment you let her in. He reached for her hand, but she pulled away. Emma, please. Don't do this. I can fix it. She stepped back, her heart pounding. You can't fix what you destroyed. For a long, painful moment, they just stood there, two people who had once shared everything, now separated by a chasm of betrayal. Then, from upstairs, the sound of movement, Sophie's door creaking open. "Mom? Dad?" she called sleepily. Emma swallowed hard. "Go back to bed, sweetheart," she said gently, forcing calm into her voice. Sophie hesitated, then closed her door again. Mark lowered his voice. "We need to talk about this later. Not tonight. Please." Emma nodded slowly, her mind spinning. "Later," she agreed, though in her heart, she knew there might not be a later. When he finally went upstairs, she remained in the dim kitchen, the phone still in her hand. The reflection of her face on the screen looked unfamiliar, tired, angry, broken. Outside, the wind picked up again, rattling the windows. She stared into the darkness beyond the glass, the storm returning like something inevitable. Somewhere deep inside, something in her began to crack, the part that had always believed she could forgive him. The following night unfolded in slow motion. Emma could feel the tension long before a single word was spoken. Dinner sat untouched on the table, roast chicken, mashed potatoes, salad, a meal she'd cooked more out of habit than appetite. Mark barely looked at it, and Sophie sensed the unease, retreating upstairs early with her headphones on. By the time the clock struck 10, only 2 glasses and a half-empty bottle of wine remained between them. Mark leaned back in his chair, his shirt collar unbuttoned, his face weary. "I don't know what else you want me to say," he muttered. Emma's voice was low, almost calm. "I want the truth. Not the edited version you've been giving me. The real one." He sighed, rubbing his temples. "I told you everything. You told me what makes you look less guilty," she cut in. "You didn't just end it, Mark. You've been lying to me for months. That's not something you patch up with apologies." Mark's patience thinned. "What do you want from me? Punishment? You want me to stand here and say I'm the worst person alive? Fine. I'll say it. I messed up. I betrayed you. But what do you want me to do now?" Emma's voice trembled, her composure cracking. "I wanted you to love me enough not to do it in the first place." The room fell silent again. Outside, the wind brushed through the trees, rattling a loose shutter against the window frame. The faint hum of the refrigerator seemed suddenly loud. Emma stood up and began pacing. "Do you know what it feels like to look at someone and realize you don't know them anymore? To see your husband and feel like you're staring at a stranger?" Mark rubbed his hands together, restless. "You think I planned this? You think I wanted any of it? It just happened." She turned sharply. "People don't just fall into betrayal, Mark. It's not an accident." He stood now too, his voice rising. "You think you've been perfect? You've been distant for years. You barely look at me anymore unless it's to remind me what I'm not doing right." I felt invisible. Her breath caught. "So you found someone to notice you? Someone who made you feel alive again?" Mark hesitated, guilt flickering across his face, and in that pause, Emma saw everything she needed to know. "That's it, isn't it?" she said quietly. "She made you feel young again. Excited. Desired. And I was just the woman who washed your shirts and paid the bills." "Emma, stop," he said, stepping forward, but she didn't move. "No, you don't get to tell me to stop," she said, voice rising now. "You brought this into our home. You lied to me, to our daughter, and you still can't even say why. Was it worth it? Was she worth losing everything?" Mark's jaw tightened. "I didn't lose everything," he said, almost defensively. "Not yet." Emma stared at him, stunned. "Not yet?" The words cut deeper than any confession. She walked past him to the counter, grabbing her glass and filling it to the brim. Her hand trembled as she drank, the bitterness of the wine burning down her throat. You really don't understand what you've done. Mark tried to soften his tone. Emma, please. Let's not do this tonight. We're both angry. We'll say things we can't take back. Her laugh was hollow. You already did. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then the sound of Sophie's footsteps creaked above them. Emma froze, lowering her voice. She can't hear this. Not her. Mark nodded and moved toward the door. Let's take this outside. Emma followed him into the backyard. The night air was heavy with humidity. The grass was slick from earlier rain, and the moon hid behind thick clouds. They stood by the patio table, words hanging unsaid between them. Mark ran a hand through his hair. I'm sorry, all right? I know I hurt you. But can we please stop turning this into a war? I want to fix it. Emma's voice was flat. You can't fix something that's already broken. He took a step closer. I still love you. Her eyes filled with tears, but her anger kept them from falling. You love the idea of me, Mark. The safe one. The steady one. The one who won't leave. But you don't love me, not really. Not the person standing here. His frustration returned, sharp and defensive. You don't get to tell me how I feel. The sudden volume startled her. She stumbled back, brushing against the table. A bottle toppled over, clinking against the stone patio. They both froze, two silhouettes in the dim light, breathing hard, hearts pounding. And in that stillness, something in Emma snapped, not from hate, but from exhaustion. From years of silence, of holding everything together while watching it crumble anyway. She whispered, almost to herself, you ruined everything. Mark stepped forward again, his voice breaking. Emma, please. But his words dissolved into the sound of glass breaking against stone. And in that single, irreversible moment, the quiet suburban night changed forever. The sound echoed through the night, a sharp crack, then silence. For a moment, Emma didn't move. The broken bottle glittered at her feet, and Mark stood frozen, a look of shock crossing his face before he stumbled backward, collapsing against the patio chair. Mark? Her voice was barely a whisper. She took a shaky step forward, the adrenaline blurring everything. Mark, say something. But he didn't. He slumped sideways, his hand reaching out as if to steady himself, before going limp. The world around her narrowed, the trees, the dark sky, the faint hum of the neighborhood all fading into the background. Mark, she cried again, kneeling beside him. Her hands pressed against his shoulder, his chest, anywhere that might bring him back. The bottle hadn't shattered clean, a jagged piece had struck his temple. Blood spread quickly through his hair, glistening dark under the faint porch light. Her breath came fast, uneven. No, no, no. She pressed her palm against the wound, trembling. Come on, please, please wake up. But there was no response. His eyes remained half open, his chest still. The night seemed to grow louder, the ticking of the garden clock, the soft chirp of crickets, the faint rustle of wind. It was as if the world refused to acknowledge what had just happened. Emma sat there for what felt like forever, her thoughts colliding in a blur of panic and disbelief. This isn't real. He's not gone. It was an accident. It was just a fight. People fight all the time. Her hands, slick with blood, trembled as she reached for his wrist. Nothing. She pulled away, stumbling to her feet. Her mind began racing. What would she do? What would she tell Sophie? The police? A sharp noise snapped her out of her thoughts, the creak of a floorboard inside the house. Sophie. Emma froze. The back porch light flickered as she turned toward the house. Through the kitchen window, she saw movement, her daughter, standing at the top of the stairs, silhouetted against the hallway light. Mom? Sophie called, her voice sleepy but confused. "Are you outside?" Emma swallowed hard, her throat dry. "Yes, sweetheart," she called, forcing her voice steady. "Go back to bed, okay? Everything's fine." Sophie hesitated, then yawned. "Okay, love you." "Love you too," Emma whispered, her voice breaking. When she was certain Sophie had gone back to her room, Emma turned back to the patio. Mark's body lay still under the cold light. The rain began again, soft at first, then heavier, washing across the stone. It smeared the blood into thin streaks that glistened like red glass. Her heart pounded in her ears as she whispered to herself, "It was an accident. He fell. It was an accident." But even as she said the words, she knew they sounded hollow. Emma stumbled inside, pacing the kitchen like a ghost. She wanted to call for help, to dial 911, but the image of Sophie's face flashed in her mind. Her daughter, standing in a courtroom, hearing her mother's name read out loud. The thought broke her. Her breathing quickened. She grabbed a towel, a sponge, anything to clean the scene outside. Her movements were frantic, almost mechanical. She wiped the blood from the patio stones, her fingers slipping on the wet surface. When she finished, she dragged a tarp from the garage, covering Mark's body. The rain muffled every sound, but she still glanced toward the house every few seconds, terrified Sophie would appear. Her mind raced. Maybe no one saw. Maybe I can fix this. But there was no fixing this. By the time she stumbled back inside, soaked and shivering, the clock read 2:47 a.m. She sank onto the floor, her body trembling uncontrollably. Her reflection in the sliding glass door looked like someone she didn't recognize, pale, hollow, almost lifeless. The house was silent again, except for the steady rhythm of rain against glass. Emma wrapped her arms around herself and whispered the words she wished she could believe. It was an accident. He just fell. But the truth lingered, quiet, undeniable, and irreversible. Outside, under the cover of rain and darkness, Mark Caldwell's birthday celebration had turned into a tragedy that no one could yet see, but soon, the whole neighborhood would. By morning, the rain had stopped. A gray haze lingered over Elmwood Drive, the kind that made everything look still and hollow. Emma sat at the kitchen table, her coffee untouched, her hands trembling every time the clock ticked. Mark's car was still parked in the driveway. She'd thought about moving it during the night but couldn't bring herself to. Every time she looked at it, her stomach turned. Sophie came downstairs, rubbing her eyes, unaware that their world had already fallen apart. "Morning, Mom," she said softly. "Dad already at work?" Emma forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Yeah. He left early. Said he had to meet someone about a project." Sophie frowned slightly. "On his birthday weekend?" "Deadlines," Emma replied quickly. "You know your father." The lie slid out too easily, and that scared her more than anything. Sophie shrugged and poured herself cereal, humming quietly. Emma watched her, every small movement, every breath, feeling a wave of guilt so sharp it nearly knocked her breath away. When Sophie left for school an hour later, Emma stood at the door, watching her walk down the street until she disappeared around the corner. Only then did she turn back toward the backyard. She hadn't dared to look since the night before. The tarp lay exactly where she'd left it, faintly rippling in the morning wind. Beneath it, the outline of Mark's body was unmistakable. Her knees gave out, and she sank onto the cold floor, pressing her hands to her face. "What have I done?" she whispered. A knock startled her. She froze, her eyes darting to the door. The sound came again, louder this time. "Mrs. Caldwell," a voice called from outside. "It's Gary, from next door." Emma scrambled up, forcing herself to breathe evenly. "Just a second," she called, wiping her face and steadying her voice. When she opened the door, Gary stood on the porch in his work jacket, holding a mug of coffee. "Hey, I hate to bother you this early, but, everything okay over here? I heard some noise last night, like glass breaking or something." Emma's heart skipped. "Oh, that," she said quickly. "Yeah, I dropped a bottle outside. Scared myself half to death." She managed a nervous laugh. Gary nodded slowly, though his eyes flickered toward the backyard. "Ah, okay. Thought I saw your porch light flickering around midnight. Storm knocked it loose," she said. "Mark was fixing it before he left this morning." At the mention of Mark's name, Gary hesitated. "Didn't see him leave. Usually, he waves when he pulls out." Her throat tightened. "He left really early. You probably missed him." Gary smiled politely, though his curiosity lingered. "All right then. You folks take care." As he walked away, Emma closed the door and leaned against it, exhaling shakily. Her hands were trembling again. For the next few hours, she paced the house. Every sound, a passing car, a creaking floorboard, made her flinch. Her mind kept replaying the moment from the night before, the dull sound, the way he fell. By afternoon, her nerves were unraveling. She couldn't eat, couldn't think. She just sat staring at the backyard, her pulse loud in her ears. Then came another sound, one she hadn't expected. A faint bark. Then another. She rushed to the window. Gary's dog, Max, a curious golden retriever, was sniffing near the hedge between their yards. Then he trotted toward the tarp, his nose low to the ground. "No," she whispered. Emma burst out the back door, calling, "Max. Go home." Her voice was sharp, desperate. The dog froze, startled, then barked again, this time louder. Moments later, Gary appeared at the fence, concern on his face. "Everything okay? Max. Get back here." But as he climbed over to grab his dog, his eyes caught on the tarp. He frowned. "Hey, what's that?" Emma's heart stopped. "Just, yard work stuff," she stammered. "Mark left it out." Gary frowned, stepping closer. "Smells kind of odd, doesn't it?" "Please," she said quickly, panic rising in her throat. "Just take your dog and go home." Gary looked at her, confused, then alarmed. "Emma, are you all right?" Before she could answer, Max pawed at the edge of the tarp, and the corner lifted, just enough to reveal what was underneath. Gary froze, eyes widening. "Oh my God!" Emma gasped, grabbing the tarp, trying to cover it again. "It's not what it looks like," she cried. But it was too late. Gary stumbled back, shouting, "Stay right there." He was already pulling his phone from his pocket, dialing frantically. Emma fell to her knees, her voice breaking. "Please, Gary, don't, please." But he was already talking to the police. Within minutes, sirens would fill the street. And Emma knew, the secret she'd tried to bury had just been uncovered. Red and blue lights painted the walls of the Caldwell home in flashes, like a silent alarm screaming across the neighborhood. Neighbors gathered on lawns, whispering in disbelief as officers taped off the yard. The once cheerful house, the one that had hosted birthdays and barbecues, now looked like something from a nightmare. Emma sat on the edge of the couch, her hands trembling in her lap. The faint smell of rain and earth clung to her clothes. An officer stood nearby, speaking softly into a radio. Outside the window, she could see two paramedics lifting the tarp from the backyard. She looked away before they uncovered it. Detective Laura Benson entered, a calm, composed woman in her early 40s with sharp eyes and a steady voice. She knelt beside Emma, not unkindly. "Mrs. Caldwell," she said, "we know this is difficult. But we need to understand what happened last night." Emma's lips parted, but no sound came out. Her throat felt raw, her voice buried beneath shock and exhaustion. Your neighbor said he found your husband outside, Benson continued gently. Can you tell me how that happened? Emma's eyes filled with tears. It was an accident, she whispered. Benson nodded slowly. Start from the beginning. Emma took a deep breath, her voice quivering. We argued about his affair. I knew for weeks, but last night it just came out. I was angry. I said things I didn't mean. He yelled, I yelled, and then. She broke off, pressing a trembling hand to her mouth. Benson waited, patient. And then? There was a bottle on the table. I picked it up. I wasn't thinking. I swear, I didn't mean to hurt him. Her breath hitched. He fell. He hit his head. It happened so fast. Tears blurred her vision. I thought maybe he'd wake up, that it wasn't as bad as it looked. But when he didn't move. The detective's expression softened. You panicked. Emma nodded weakly. Yes. I didn't know what to do. Sophie was upstairs, she didn't see anything. I just kept thinking, if I called for help, she'd lose both of us. For a moment, the only sound in the room was the muffled rain outside. Benson exhaled quietly. Mrs. Caldwell, I'm going to need you to come with us to the station. We'll get your daughter somewhere safe for now, all right? Emma nodded numbly, unable to meet her eyes. When the officers led her out, the morning light had turned harsh and white. Neighbors whispered from behind drawn curtains. Some looked at her with pity, others with disbelief. She didn't look back. At the police station, the hours blurred together, questions, signatures, the hum of fluorescent lights. Emma answered everything, her voice steady but hollow. She didn't ask for a lawyer at first, she didn't argue. She just told them what happened. When Detective Benson finally stepped out of the room, Emma sat alone, staring at her reflection in the one-way mirror. Her eyes looked empty. The woman staring back at her wasn't the same person who'd spent hours decorating balloons and baking a cake just 2 nights before. Later, Sophie was brought in by a social worker, confused, tear-streaked, clutching her backpack like a shield. Emma's heart broke at the sight of her. Mom? Sophie whispered, standing in the doorway. They said you have to stay here. Emma nodded, struggling to keep her voice steady. Sweetheart, I need you to listen to me. What happened last night, it was a mistake. I didn't mean for it to happen. I love you more than anything, okay? Sophie's lower lip trembled. Is Dad? Emma's breath caught. Yes, she said softly. He's gone. The girl began to cry quietly, and Emma reached for her, but an officer gently placed a hand between them. I'm sorry, ma'am. It's time. They led Sophie away, and Emma's sobs finally came, deep, broken sounds she'd been holding inside for hours. Days later, her confession would make headlines. Local woman admits to killing husband in domestic dispute. Reporters would camp outside the courthouse. Neighbors would debate whether it was a crime of passion or a tragic accident. But none of that mattered to Emma. In her heart, the punishment had already begun. When the trial came months later, she sat quietly as the verdict was read: manslaughter, not murder. 10 years in prison. No celebration, no outrage. Just silence. Before she was led away, she looked once more at Sophie sitting in the front row, older somehow, her eyes filled with both love and sorrow. Emma gave her a faint smile. Be happy, sweetheart. Don't let this be your story. And then she was gone. Outside, autumn leaves drifted across the courthouse steps, and the wind carried away the last echoes of the life Emma Caldwell once knew, a life built on love, undone by secrets, and ended in one terrible, irreversible moment. In the quiet corners of small towns, tragedy doesn't always arrive with warning, sometimes it grows, silently, inside the walls of a home. And when love turns into silence, silence can become something far more dangerous.